Hi, welcome to Swishing Mindsets. I'm Anuradha, and today we are speaking to K. Hari Kumar, also known as Horror Kumar, who has recently come out with his new book, Dakini. He is an author of 8 books, including the bestseller Daiva, Discovering the Extraordinary World of Spirit Worship, and the popular horror anthology, India's Most Haunted. His narratives are rooted in Indian folklore and mythology. So, hi, Hari, or Horror Kumar,
And
I should
rather,
say.
just call me Hari. I'm kind of moving out of the horror persona, so just
Okay,
call me Hari now.
okay.
Thank you for having me on Swishing Mindset.
Thank you for coming on it. And why did you say that you're going out of the horror genre? Because the book is very much that, right? Or you
Yes,
changing it?
the book is in that genre, but I think I've been writing horror for the last 10 years, maybe. So every time you write horror, there's a very repetitive phrase in Dakini. Tragedy when it strikes, it takes a piece of you.
Yeah.
Similarly, when you sit down to write horror, it takes a piece of you. It takes a very heavy toll on your mind. So that's why I am concentrating on non-fiction and mytho-fiction. So I'm slowly moving. It's not really far away from horror, but moving towards folklore and mythology now.
Oh, wonderful. Both subjects which I really, really enjoy. So,
Yeah, it is the subjects that have fascinated me. In fact, these are the very subjects which have actually led me to horror. Yeah.
yeah, I can see that because there's a lot of folklore, right, in this as well. Like you've talked about the forest, the goddess there, and a lot of it is to do with villages, even the
Absolutely. Yeah.
dialect, things like that. So I think let's start with the book first, Dakini.
Hmm.
Tell me,
Hmm.
what prompted you to write it? And I
Hmm.
don't want to give any spoilers. I've just finished the book, like I told you.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for reading the book. So, yeah.
of course, my pleasure.
Yeah.
So, tell me what led to you writing this book? How did the plot come to you?
Yes. So I have to take you back in time, like 2019 के आसपास. Okay. And this was the time when I got the opportunity to write India's Most Haunted, which is a collection of short stories based on real haunted places in India. They're all stories. Okay. That's a disclaimer. They are stories. They're works of fiction. Um, but so when and that's again with HarperCollins, and when Harper asked me to work on this, I had prepared this list of haunted places in India, 100 haunted places, and uh, one of the places was in Odisha, and it involved a concept called Dahini. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. It's Dahini, and I'm assuming it's pronounced as Dahini. And it's about a woman who was hanged for being a Dahini or a witch. And there's a law which is in place, an act which prevents witch hunting in the state. But despite of that, these atrocities happen. So this came from when I was researching for India's Most Haunted. I found it on a newspaper report. Then uh, I started digging into it. It's not just Odisha. There are also similar incidents that have happened in Assam, Bengal, Jharkhand, and then most recently I got to know that it's even happening in Rajasthan. So, but this news and then this story of an activist who a Padma Shri awarded activist, she passed away this year, and her story, she was also labeled as a Diane or a witch, and but then she fought, and then she has been an activist who's been helping other women. So all these things were there in my mind. The idea was there in the mind. I wrote a short story in India's Most Haunted. It's called Dahini of Manglo Jodi. Um, but I wanted to write further. Because somewhere that pain was there, that, pain of getting executed because of what you're not, right? So, but for that to become a full-fledged story, I needed a character to drive it forward, which I was not getting. It was there in my head. And then flash forward to 2021, 2022, something very tragic happened in my personal life. We had to deal with a loss, a personal loss of a baby. And suddenly, when I saw my wife in that labor room, that's when I had this character shouting out to me that, and then I had Mamta. The Mamta became that character, and that the story, the concept was of this witch hunt. When those two were placed together, Dakini happens. So that's the inspiration. These two characters. One is the uh, woman who, one is the concept of witch hunt, and then my own personal life, the pain that my wife went through. So the pain of losing a baby. So these two, when they combined, that became the idea for Dakini.
Yeah, yeah, thanks you for sharing that. And it's from what you said, it's also a very feminist tale. When I was reading the book, I felt that,
Mhm.
because of course it talks about a pregnant woman, and in the beginning, I mean, that's not a spoiler really, it's just the beginning of the book.
Yeah, it's the beginning. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and the witch hunt is happening. But,
Mhm.
you've written it almost, I felt like, it makes sense now because you said you saw your wife and that's when you started writing it.
Because I could only see her pain. What she was going through, only she could understand.
Yeah, but it's like you've
Yeah.
written it from that point of view, from the point of view of a woman, I felt.
Right. I've tried my level best, but yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So was it deliberate to make it like a feminist story? Because in that, it's the strength of a woman and even the Dakini, again, I don't know if
Hmm.
I'm pronouncing it right, but they kind of, I mean, not they, you kind of equated to Devi Shakti, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah. So was the feminist angle like, was it deliberate or it just happened?
Uh, the concept was deliberate, as in the concept of a woman who has been hunted as a witch, who's been labeled as a witch, but who is actually an amalgamation of all the feminine energies. Okay, that's it. That was intentional. The rest of it, I mean, see, when you're writing, you don't really have a control on what all you're going to write. You just keep writing, 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 writing. And then it's only when you edit it, then you realize, oh God, I've written this or written that. Okay. So I wouldn't say it was, see, I'm not a feminist. I don't even know what is, I don't even read feminist literature. So I can't be a feminist like that. So whatever is written there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, like
Now,
strong women, they're standing up for themselves. And at
it's an
the end of it,
independent
it's
woman. She's
yeah,
an independent woman who has gone through a lot in her life. She was brought up in an orphanage. I mean, these are not spoilers because this is part
yeah,
of
yeah,
the story. It's in the beginning itself. And she
yeah,
is a very successful journalist, but she had a big fall, which was the abortion. Now she's trying to come out of that. So it's a journey of an individual. If we look at that, it could happen to a man as well.
right.
I mean, it could be a different kind of a loss, but this could happen to a man as well. So it's an individual story. And now coming back to the aspect of the Devi, see, I am a very, uh, I've been brought up by a very religious mother. And so I think I've been a very big devotee of Durga. My wife is a big devotee of Durga. So I think I have this natural inclination towards the mother goddess. So maybe that's why the spiritual angle comes into play here. But when you look at Dakini, if you want to, what is a Dakini? Dakini is a witch in popular culture. She's considered as a very negative entity. So even in Malayalam, so I come from that part of the world and from Kerala. In Malayalam, we had this uh, children's comic strip. And in that comic strip, you had a negative character who was a witch, and she was known as Dakini. So we've all grown up reading that Dakini is a witch, an old hag with long ears and saggy breasts and everything. But the thing is, the word Dayan comes from Dakini. Dahini comes from Dakini, Dakin. All these negative words come from Dakini, and even in the Puranas, Dakini is mentioned as somebody who appears very fierce. Okay. But at the same time, if you look at Lalita Sahasrama, you have one of the names of the baby as Dakini. If you look at the our scriptures, then there is a mention that the Dakini is an attendant of Durga. So she cannot be negative. She may be fierce, she may be angry, okay, but she cannot be negative. She is angry because of something, because of an injustice, which exactly is the motto of Dakini in my story.
Yeah, absolutely, because she's angry, obviously, because of an injustice. And she's not negative because she's actually protecting women and children. And, she's a source of strength for the village women. Like,
He is protecting
having
the
a,
pregnant woman.
yeah, pregnant
And
women. Mhm.
there's a line in the book, when she's angry, she has a strength of 100 men. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that is the Dakini. That is the feminine power. If a woman is wronged and she is hurt, she shouldn't feel that there's nothing she can do about it. She has to do something about it. That's what Dakini is, and Mamta does that. And it depends on the reader how they want to look at it. They can look at it in a very symbolic or a feminist point of view. They can look at it like an epic horror, and you've got supernatural powers or something. It all depends on the person who's reading it, the way they want to perceive it. I've just written a book with a very open kind of an interpretation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even Mamta, I mean, she's strong and she takes on the fight really. But she also, like, she goes through a pregnancy, the abortion, and
That's the human side.
she's ready to run away from the scene,
Hmm.
right? Till her assistant
Yes,
reminds her that, look, I looked up to you and, you're so brave and you're running away. Right? And
right.
then she finds
Then
strength inside her again.
and then she also looks at this other lady, other girl who's pregnant, who has no privilege that Mamta has, and she can't even run away. That's what brings her
Yeah,
to, that these two girls, one is Tara, the other one is Kuhu. One is helpless, the other one wants to do something with her life because of the privilege she has. I'm talking about Tara.
yeah.
These two girls somehow influence her to kind of, move forward in the story.
Yeah. No, and when you've described the book is so visual when you've described this, this Devi Shakti and strength of 100 men, and how when you see you say ki Devi Roop, like,
Hmm.
it's amazing the way you've described it. I could, like, I was just reading the pages, but I could just visualize the entire thing, like how powerful. Like you said that, the men around, they quaked, in fear and reverence as well. So,
Yeah,
the
there is reverence as well. That will be a spoiler I won't reveal
no,
because
no, no, I'm
it's
not
one of the
going more
favorite.
into it. Yeah, I don't want
No,
to
no,
go
I'm
into
I'm
it.
just saying because it is one of my favorite scenes in the book, which happens in the end, obviously, and that ending is inspired from one of our hymns. It's Aigiri Nandini, Mahishasuramardini, that hymn, which is very popular at least in the south. Even in the north, it's popular. So the climax is inspired by that hymn.
Yeah, and you've referred to it also, the
I
Mahishasura
had to because
Mardini. Yeah.
a lot of people might miss it. So sometimes you have to spoon feed.
Yeah.
You have to spoon feed, yeah. Because even now, I've talked to a lot of readers, I've talked to English professors who have read it. They couldn't, find a lot of those symbolic mythological messaging which I have left, which is kind of shocking. So that's why some of these things have been spoon-fed. Others, I can share it with you if you want the symbolisms which have been used in the
Yes,
book.
please. I was going to ask you. Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I should have. I have it with me because I could
Anything
have
you
shared it.
remember,
Yeah.
you can mention. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm.
But those are for people who have read the book. Otherwise, spoilers.
No, no, no. No spoilers here. People
Yeah,
can read it and then, yeah. But
yeah.
I still want to know the influence of
Mm.
mythology and folklore because the book is really steeped in it. I can see that.
Yes. So, see, the thing is, for that you'll have to understand how uh, my childhood was shaped. I was brought up in Gurgaon. Okay, and I come from very normal, I mean, very humble middle class family, and back in the day, we used to visit. My dad used to work, and we used to visit my hometown in Kerala only once in a year, and that would suck up all the savings that they had. Okay, so that was the kind of upbringing that I had. We lived in a very small one-room house in Gurgaon, and so every time I visited my native in the summer during the summer holidays, I would hear these stories about ghosts and witches and goblins from my grandmothers, both of them, Dadi and Nani. They would tell me stories. So Nani's stories were mostly from the southern part of Karnataka, and Dadi's stories were mostly from the Kerala side. So I had a very good, I've got very fond memories of the summers, summer vacations. लाइट जाती थी रात को, पावर कट्स होते थे उस टाइम पे, उस जमाने में। अभी तो बहुत कम है, अभी तो होता ही नहीं है एक्चुअली पावर कट। उस जमाने में शाम को इतने बजे से इतने बजे तक पावर कट होता था, एंड ऑल ऑफ अस किड्स would just gather, and Dadi would start telling us the stories of yakshis, dakinis, pishachas, rakshasas, brahma rakshas. So these stories kind of shaped my imagination. And then my mother used to read me stories from Chanda Mama. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yeah, yeah, I've read it in my childhood. I'm surprised you mentioned it.
Yeah, it was discontinued in 2007,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But so I had the good fortune of being able to. So if I'm sure you might remember, it also had Vikram Vetal,
Yes, yes, I
stories of Vikram
remember.
Vetal,
Yeah.
and it had this really creepy picture of Vikram carrying Vetal on his
Yeah, yeah, I can
shoulder.
see it. Yeah.
You can
Right.
see it, right? So that's the imagination, that's the childhood fascination, which kind of prompted me to follow this route. So even when I grew up, when I started writing, the visuals used to be from those days. So that is why I think I started writing horror, which was rooted in folklore and mythology, Indian mythology, not Western mythology. Because otherwise, if you look at most of our Indian writers, they just end up, and not just writers, even filmmakers, they just end up uh, repurposing Western tropes. A Chudail is nothing but a vampire, but it's not. The concept of a Chudail is very different
Yeah.
from what is portrayed on your screen and even in popular books. No, that's not it. Even Dakini, Yakshini. The concept of a Yakshini has been brutally uh, murdered by popular culture in Kerala. Yakshini is also an attendant of the Devi. But if you look at Malayalam films or Malayalam books, the Yakshi is nothing but a Chudail, a vampire. It's not. It's not like that.
Yeah, it's more
So
layered.
yeah, I'm sorry, what?
More layered. I said it's more layered.
It's more layered, and the concept is very similar to a Dakini.
Yeah.
But if you look at the books that have been written, or if you look at the popular films that have come out exploring the concept, it's just a Western woman in white vampire who's
Hmm.
been repurposed as a Yakshi in Malayalam.
Yeah, very one-dimensional. No, actually, you're right, because
Very
I saw
one-dimensional.
I saw
Hmm.
Stree 2. I enjoyed it. And of
Hmm.
course, it gets into folklore and things. I don't want to criticize it because of
Hmm.
that. But, I've seen Stranger Things, and at the end of it, it reminded me a bit of Stranger Things. The upside
Okay.
down world and, things. I don't
I've
know if
not
you've seen
watched 3
Stranger
2,
Things. Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I can understand
Reminded
the,
me
the
of a
influence
bit
will
like that. Yeah.
see that influence will be there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then repurposing the whole thing is something very lazy. So even if I see, if it would have been easier for me to just repurpose Ya Yorona as a Dakini. Ya Yorona is a South American concept who is also a supernatural entity who has killed her child, and now she's looking for her child. She keeps weeping, and Yorona means a weeper. So it would have been very easy to just repurpose that concept and just name her Dakini and set her in India. I don't do that. But that's what many people are doing, which is why I think we have to stress on original stories.
So it's important to you, I'm saying that, I mean, revive our folklores or,
It is very
stay close
important.
to it. Hmm.
Yeah, because see, what happens is if when a writer or a filmmaker kind of um, uses a supernatural entity which is rooted in folklore, but then completely changes the meaning of it. Then the future generations will actually feel that what this version has been portrayed is the real version of the folklore, which it may not be. And that's what happened with Adi Purush.
Yeah. So, I'm still stuck on what you said that, there are a lot of references to mythology and folklore in the book. So,
Hmm.
so I'm just
Okay.
thinking maybe I can mention a couple, which will
Hmm.
not give away the plot. So,
Hmm.
it's very rooted in the forest, right? Like a forest area,
Yes.
everything,
Ah,
that, and a banyan tree, right?
right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, any references for that?
Sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Yeah, I said that, in mythology and folklore, you've
Ah,
referenced a lot of it in the book. So,
yeah,
a lot of the action takes place in the dark forest, right?
correct.
Yeah,
Kalivan.
and there's also
Hmm.
the banyan tree,
Hmm.
right? The roots of the banyan tree and
Right.
like that, yeah. So, were they just, that these are tropes, right? So, were
Right.
these just tropes for you, or are they also like, very intrinsic to mythology and folklore for you?
So the banyan tree is very important here because that's where most of the execution happens.
Yeah.
Banyan tree is considered to be the abode of see, it depends on which school of thought you're coming from. One school of thought will actually consider the banyan tree as holy and the abode of the gods. There would be another school which might consider as the abode of the bhoots or the restless souls or the pishachas. So I have used that trope here because the banyan tree is used, the people tree is used for this, right? And both of them are kind of from a very similar family as well. And in our culture, wherever you go, okay, from the north to south, east to west, a banyan tree or a people tree, if it starts sprouting, you are not allowed to chop it. That is the kind of reverence we have for the banyan tree. So on such a banyan tree, which has a temple-like significance, you're hanging a woman with the power of a lie. That is the symbolism that which I have used. So that's there. Then, even if you look at the names of the characters, Mamta, I think it's very,
Yeah, yeah, it's
uh,
maternal love, yeah.
yeah, maternal love.
Hmm.
Tara is a very important.
Star, yeah.
Huh?
A star.
Uh,
Even mythology, yeah, she's a mythological figure as well, right?
she's a mythological figure in
Yeah.
Tibetan mythology. So that
Oh, in
way,
Tibetan mythology, okay. I'm
yes,
thinking
in
of
Tibetan mythology,
Ramayana, sorry, Sugriva
no,
and
no,
his
no, no,
wife,
no,
yeah.
no, no, no. So
Hmm.
because the Dakini is also pretty popular, is a very important entity in Tibetan mythology.
Okay.
He's somebody who helps you, in achieving meditative states. She's a yogini.
Oh.
There, although she's portrayed as a woman who's covered in blood with three eyes and drinking from a skull, a very scary depiction, but she is supposed to be a very intelligent, very full of wisdom, and she's very innocent, and that's the reason why sometimes she is seen as this fierce, and because of the way she reacts. I mean, it's a very beautiful concept. I mean, if you get time, please do read about it. So some of it has also been used here, and she is also somebody who is ruling over Shunyata.
Hmm. Okay.
So now you know why Shunyata makes an appearance here.
Yeah, because I even noted down, what
Hmm,
you've written. One second, I'll just find it.
hmm.
Yeah, I'll just quote from your book, right?
Yeah,
So when the powerful supernatural entity starts its influence, the
hmm.
person's soul is pulled into a dark, empty space called Shunyata. This is
Right.
the realm of utter emptiness, a black abyss where the soul is lost, drifting into figments of memories consumed by a profound eternal void. So I love this.
So, see, that's again from a mythological point of view, Shunyata is the nothingness. Okay, but if you look at it, in my interpretation is very simple. It's an atheist's view of afterlife. Okay, so even in Buddhist traditions, after you kind of when you die, your soul kind of either goes into the circulation or it passes into this nothingness. And that's the ultimate aim in some of the school of thought. So Dakini is somebody who rules over this nothingness, over this Shoonyata. Now, Tara um, is the mother of liberation in the very same Buddhist mythology. And she hears the cries of the people who are trapped in this samsara or sansar. So that way, Tara plays a even our Tara in this book also plays a very important role, where she helps in, safeguarding Kuhu's baby. So I think that way it's very. Then Parashudar is there,
Yeah.
Pandey. Again, a very symbolic name here because Parshuram is somebody who's considered as uh, a representative of Hindu culture. And yeah, so that's
And
there.
he proclaims also, I've forgotten exactly what he says in the book that,
Hmm.
he says, my name is this and I'm here to, fulfill
Yeah,
the
he
role,
does that.
basically.
He does that, and I think that's why it's in. See, if I reveal it, then it's a spoiler.
Yeah, yeah.
But that whole last scene after everything happens, I think that's very, very symbolic, especially from the part of the world where I come from, because that part is called Parashurama Kshetra. That is the region produced by Parshuram, because it was believed that after uh, you know after his whole anger thing, he had to perform a penance, and for that he needed a land. And what he did was he throws his axe into the Arabian Sea, and from there comes a land, and that land is a stretch from Gokarna to Kanyakumari. So that region is known as Parashurama Kshetra.
That's great. I'm so glad we managed to get some references.
There are, in fact, according to folk tales, Parashuram is the reason why um Durga is still worshipped in that region, because he's the one who's brought that, who has retained that form of worship. Durga, that is the sacred feminine, and then you've got Naga worship, which is the serpents. Otherwise, these two might have been lost.
Oh, even that makes an appearance in your book. I won't say
It
where, but
does.
yeah, it's
It
there.
does. That's why I said
The
the ending is
symbolism is there.
very, very symbolic.
Yeah.
Because Parshuram brings the Vaishnava and the Shaivic aspect. But according to folklore, Parshuram is the one who established all the Durga temples on the southwestern coast of India. According to folklore, these are not historical records. These are
Folklore, of
folklore.
course. That's what
Yeah.
makes it so interesting. So we've got
Yes.
the serpent reference, and
Yes.
whoever people can
And
read
serpent
and
references
find
are
it.
there.
Yeah,
Plenty of them.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
There's another one, the rooster deity. You've mentioned
Yes.
the Kukud Dev, right? And you've said,
Yes.
I'll read it out from here.
Hmm.
It says, Aturas were traditionally iron smelters. It is believed that they are descendants of a mythical rooster deity called Kukud Dev.
Hmm.
According to another local legend, Aturas were born from the trident of Bandagini. So you've got the
Hmm.
trident also like Shiva's
Trishul. Huh. Hmm.
Trishul, and you've got this Kukud Dev, which I found very interesting because the rooster is there pretty much throughout in this village, from
Yes.
beginning to end.
So,
Yeah.
so the idea was you've got, see, this came from, so I worked on Daiva, and while working on Daiva, I was able to um, get a deeper understanding of how totemistic deities work. I got to learn a lot about totemism, and I kind of implemented that in Dakini. So originally, Dakini was supposed to come out before Daiva. This was supposed to come out last year in October, but there were some delays. And because of that delay, I was able to explore and uh, expand this whole concept of the totemistic gods, the kukuts and the rooster and the hen. Idea is very simple. You've got a male deity, you've got a female deity, and the male deity sacrifices his wife at the time of a great famine.
Yeah. The
So you
hen is
understand,
sacrificed. Yeah.
yeah. So now what they do is at the altar of the rooster deity, a girl who just started menstruating, she comes and sacrifices the hen.
Yeah.
So the idea is very easy to understand if you look at it. It's a I think that's a reference to patriarchy, um, setting the rules for women, for girls.
Okay. So this was drawn from any particular folklore, or this is something that
A lot of
you
folklores. I
created?
mean, it will be
Okay.
very difficult to tell
Yeah.
you from where I got the
No, but
idea.
you like
See,
this is something that you created as a mix
yes,
of everything.
whatever you see there, the kukuts, the dagi. So dagi again, it can be interpreted as dakini ka short form. Dagi can also
Yeah.
be interpreted as somebody with a dag, and the dag could be the menstrual blood. It could be a dag in the character, because those are the things which I'm talking about later in the book. But obviously, these terms, this even the tribe, the Adivasi tribe, they're all fictitious, but they are inspired from real tribes and their forms of worship. Even the Muloni leaf, if you remember, Muloni is a very fictitious.
Yeah.
It's a fictitious tree, but the thing is, it draws inspiration from sap-producing deciduous trees, which exist. Okay, and even in Kerala, we have this Palapu. Palapu is uh, it's called a devil's tree in English, and it has these flowers which produce amazing smell. But it's so poisonous that if one touch, you may actually end up dying.
Wow.
And yeah, so the idea was adapted, from there to fit into this kind of a thing. So that's there.
No, you've created a very rich world. It's very real. Like I'm asking you all this because it feels
Hmm.
like, it really exists, because the forest, the smells, the flowers, then, there's
Yes,
menstrual blood you've mentioned, breast milk,
yes,
there's all these
breast milk.
elements are
Yes.
there. But at the same time, I want to mention, to whoever's listening in that it's not a dark book in that sense. Because when I started reading it, I usually, I'm avoid horror because
Hmm.
it just,
Yeah, I know, yeah.
yeah.
And that's the reason why horror doesn't sell so much,
Yeah, I'm
unfortunately.
sorry about that. But this was actually
Uh,
a pleasant read.
hmm.
Because it shifts, after that first prologue, it just shifts into a very urban landscape and people going about their business, living in their apartments, and then it keeps, alternating. So you're seeing it almost like, it's happening from your perspective. So I like that
Hmm.
balance that, the book has. And maybe
Hmm.
you also get that outsider's perspective because you're entering that forest and you're seeing it, through the protagonist's eyes because she's a modern woman, right? So, and like I said, there's a rooster. It's very rich, that you can almost hear the forest, smell the forest, things like that. It's very well done.
That's because I had the pleasure of doing a lot of research for Daiva. That's what I said. The whole delay, because the book which was supposed to come out last year gets delayed by a whole year. At that time, I was so angry, to be very honest. I was very angry. And then a very similar book came out the same time. And I was like, oh God, now what? But I think it was for a reason because whatever I learned for Daiva, because for Daiva is a non-fiction, and I was traveling and I was spending time in remote villages in the coastal regions of Karnataka and Kerala. Uh, I was witnessing rituals and then I was reading about it. So, and I was also reading stuff which was written 130 years back by some British explorers. So overall, it gave me this aspect which wasn't there in Dakini. And whatever you see now, it's not just my imagination, it's also what I have experienced during my research. I think that's why it kind of comes out as so realistic. Because if you go back and try to search for things, you will get certain things which are very similar.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, it's interesting because I was going to ask you, have you done research? So, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say I've not read Deva, but I will after our call.
Yeah.
But could you talk a little bit about the research that you did and the rituals that you witnessed?
Uh, I
Or just
wouldn't
tell
talk
us about
about
the
it.
book. Tell me about the book, yeah.
About what? About Daiva?
About
Or
Deva,
Dakini?
yeah, where it took you, your
Okay, so
experiences through that.
no, Daiva, it's about the spirit worship of the Tulu speaking region of Karnataka and northern Kerala. It's a very small strip of land. And the people there, they worship these entities called Daivas. So they're also known as, some of them are also known as Bhutas. And but these days, the more respectable term that is used by people is Daiva. So Daiva Aradhani means the spirit of the spirit deities. A very similar form of worship exists in northern Kerala as well, and there it is called Tayyam. Tayyam and Daiva are the same. Daiva becomes Tayya, Tayya becomes Tayyam. That's how the language works, right? When you move from one region to another.
Yeah.
So, so you might have actually seen Daiva worship in Kantara, and if you watched that film. And Teyyam, again, you might have seen these pictures of very scary deities with red paints and big headgears and, walking on fire and everything. So those are the kind of ritualistic dances which I witnessed for my research. And I think some of them left a very lasting impact on my head, and also the stories of some of these deities are very, very heartbreaking and thought-provoking. And somehow maybe those things also kind of so I was traveling from one region to another trying to understand what is the story of this because these devas are your folk deities, spirit deities. So I was trying to understand what is the origin story of this folk deity, because it's not written down. These are all part of the oral literature, oral traditions. So, so I think Daiva documents that, and not from a scholar's perspective, because I'm not a scholar. Again, like I mentioned, I'm not somebody who is a feminist or a scholar. These are not my thing. I'm just a storyteller. But I've written Daiva in the form of a memoir where I'm trying to explore my roots, because these are the very deities that my ancestors have also worshipped at some point in time. So that's the narrative there. That's the book.
Okay. Um, yeah, very interesting. I'm going to read it for sure. But any rituals, anything that you can talk about, which, which surprised you, let's say?
See, I already knew about it, so I was not very surprised. Like maybe for somebody who's an outsider,
Yeah,
they
maybe
might,
he would be
yeah,
surprised. Like, we don't know
they
about it.
would be definitely surprised. Like they might even be shocked, because in some, so these ritualistic dances involve possession. So there is a dancer who is dressed up like a deity with face paint and headgears and everything, colorful dresses, and this person invokes the spirit of this deity into his body, and then that person becomes the deity. And the people who are out there witnessing this ritual, they go to this deity asking for solutions to their problems, asking for forecasts, and all those things. In the olden days, disputes were also settled in the court of these deities. So nowadays, it's obviously you've got courts, so nobody settles disputes this way. But still, there are some visuals which can be very scary. Like in Kerala, there is Agni Praveshana. So the Teyyam deity walks on uh, fire, and it's a very scary thing to witness. And the thing is, when they come out of it, they are unharmed. Their body is unharmed. So, which is very uh, striking. And there are also scenes where, you've got utensils or things which they hit on their head and they bend it completely. And so those are very scary things. They have this टॉर्च जिसे आप मशाल कहते हैं आप, ठीक है, मशाल को वो अपने सीने के बिल्कुल छाती पे रख देते हैं. Those are visuals that might scare somebody who's an outsider. But for the people there, it's what is done. That's what separates this normal dancer from this deity.
Yeah. So, tell me, Hari, you're talking about possessions, you're talking about all this, even in your book, you've not
Hmm.
tried to, um, what is the word, like, explain it away, right?
Hmm.
Hmm? So tell me, what is your personal view? Do you believe in this? The
I mean,
supernatural, the paranormal?
it's a very tricky question, because I always try to stay away from answering this.
Okay.
Because what I believe should not be something which lead somebody else to believe,
Yeah, of course. You don't have to answer it.
right?
You can answer it the way you want.
Yes. The way I want is very simple. The possessions that you see in the films, they don't really happen. Those are just stories that somebody has written. I'm not saying somebody like me, but it's some writers or some directors' version. And the most of the times, if there is possession, then it's dissociation from the actual self, which I think as a you might have a better understanding of that. It is DID, that is dissociative identity disorder, where the person dissociates from himself
Yeah,
and splits into another personality. So most of the time, it's that, and that's the reason why the person doesn't even recollect being somebody else. And that's what happens. The best reference is Manjulika from Bhool Bhulaiya.
right.
We had an
Yeah,
preposterous third part that released recently, but I'm talking about the first part,
yeah,
which was the best movie that was made on that subject. So that's something that's an involuntary nature of kind of possession where you are not in control, right? Where a supernatural entity enters your body and you become possessed. Now, whether you are actually possessed or whether it's a DID, that's a completely different argument. But the thing is, it's of involuntary nature. Now, the other thing which I mentioned earlier with that ritualistic dance, it's totally different from it because there the possession is voluntary. The dancer invokes the deity and lets it enter his body. Okay, so the nature of possession is very different here. It's a voluntary kind of possession, and the scholarly view is that they kind of go into this auto hypnosis or self hypnosis. By being open to suggestion, by auto suggestion. That is, because at the time of invocation, they sing these folk poems about the glories or the journey of this deity. And while singing this, they transform into the deity. So it's a kind of auto hypnosis, and you've got the environment around you where there is a lot of drum beats going on, which you see in the Dakini, the
yeah,
drum beat, the
yeah.
horns, and everything, because that's exactly what you see in these dance rituals as well. So I think that's the difference. The two types of possessions, there is involuntary and voluntary, and both of them have a rational explanation as well. Now it's up to you whether you want to choose the rational or the supernatural or the spiritual this thing. I leave it to your choice
Or imagination.
or imagination.
Okay, so Hari, again, you don't have to answer this.
Hmm.
But have you ever experienced anything paranormal or supernatural?
I have experienced a few things, but I don't know if they're paranormal, supernatural, or I mean, like one of the things which I told you already, Dakini was supposed to come out last year, right? And but now I feel had it come out last year, it would have been a very half-baked kind of a story. I mean, it appeared very complete and everything at that time, but I think the whole delay and writing Daiva in between was a God-given gift. So here, I don't know if you want to label it paranormal or supernatural or divine intervention, but these kind of things have happened in my life, and I like to believe that there is a higher power. My personal view is that it's a mother goddess who looks after me. So that's what I believe in. And I think that's more powerful than all the supernatural entities around,
Yeah,
if that
true.
makes sense.
It does,
If
it
that
does.
makes sense.
Of
Mhm.
course, because even I feel like a lot of time we call them patterns in our life, or we label it serendipity. Or
Serendipity is the right word.
yeah,
Yeah. See,
something
there
like
is a something like I think it's a very Jungian way of looking at things, that everything is happening, you know, for a reason. So what I try to interpret is that now this is a very personal interpretation. It's not proven, or I can't prove it. Okay, but I believe that there are spirits or there are entities all around us which we cannot see, which we cannot perceive, but they are influencing our decisions, they are influencing our lives. And yeah, I think there's a very interesting concept in Brihad Samhita, which says that all the omens, you understand omens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Shakun apshakun जिसे हम कहते हैं हिंदी में,
Yeah.
that these are actually carried out by these spiritual entities that are present around us. And these entities could be bhoots, they could be prates, they could be anything, things that we cannot perceive with our limited sense of perception. So, yeah, they could be energies because these days you just add energy and you can sell it across the oceans and make millions.
Yeah, energy is a buzzword these days.
Yeah, the gurus are doing it already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even in your book, you've just said that, there's a shadow past. It's like that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. A shadow pass. Because sometimes things just nudge you in the right direction. And that nudge, you don't know where it came from.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is that God for you and in the book? Because, in the book, like I was saying before, we started recording, I was saying that, you've
Uh,
mentioned God in a few places. Even
mm.
Mamta, the protagonist, asks herself about God. Then, the word atheist is used, oh, you atheists, So it's a recurring theme, So like, what is God for you and also through the book?
So I've already mentioned what is God for me in
Yeah, yeah, of
the
course.
last
Yeah.
question. I think it's an all-pervading mother goddess who looks after everything. And again, just because I am using the term mother doesn't mean it has to be a female. Now it's kind of tricky, but
Female
because
energy,
you
maybe we can say. Yeah.
energy, see again for that you need to go into Dvaita and Advaita.
Yeah.
Advaita says it's an energy, that God is not a person, it's a Nirguna Brahman. Brahman is the concept of God. And Parabrahman, if it's Nirgun Brahman, then it's a formless God.
Yeah.
But if it's Sagun Brahman, it's a God with a form.
Hmm.
So that debate will go on. I don't want to get into that,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
maybe when I am learned enough to talk about it, I'll talk about it. But right now, I believe that this Parabrahman is a sacred feminine or Adi Parashakti, whatever you want to call it. But if you look at that chapter where, because there is a chapter, and in fact, the excerpt has just come out on one of the websites, and it talks about Mamata questioning her God, the God which she grew up with, which is a Catholic God, which is an all-pervading, singular God, right? And then she also she has a lot of questions. Then why didn't that God save me when this happened in my life and that happened
Yeah.
in my life and all? And then she also looks at Kuku, the Adivasi girl who believes in this tribal God. So those are the questions which I've also explored because for every person the interpretation of God is different. I am also praying to some deity. Somebody else is praying to some other deity. Somebody says there is no God, then what is it actually carrying out? Who's listening to our prayers then?
Yeah, that's true. We're all exploring. Even in the beginning, in the epilogue, before the witch hunt is happening and, she's hanged,
Hmm.
there she's calling out to God. You please
She
save
does,
me.
yes.
Right
She's
before
falling
the
onto the
moment it happens. Yeah.
yes, she calls out to the Bandagini, which is
Mandakini. Yeah.
the female goddess from the tribe.
Yeah.
Yes, and but she's hanged, so that means her prayer was not heard.
Yeah. And it
And
actually
again,
reaches
even
out to you, because you're like, oh
hmm,
God, like, nothing is like now she's praying, maybe something will happen.
maybe something because in a very similar way, there is another chapter. This is where Kuhu is beaten by her husband at night.
Yeah.
And while she's getting beaten, she looks out of the window and prays to the forest goddess.
Yeah.
And then that's when this fleeting uh,
Shadow. Yeah.
shadow of a woman passes outside. And
Yeah.
then he has to go out looking for who was
God
there.
looking. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
think we
yeah,
are revealing too much now. So,
we are revealing too much. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, interesting. So, your book also has, I mean, for lack of a better word, tropes or hooks or whatever you call it, like at key moments, there's thunder and there's lightning and, there's darkness. All that happens. So, do you have fun with it or
I love
what
it.
is that?
See, I love it. So I'll tell you a very funny and funny incident from. So I wrote this web series called Brahm. Okay,
Yeah.
and while we were shooting for Brahm, my producer was like, we were shooting in Shimla, okay, and most of the time when we were shooting, it was raining, and then there was this stretch of a few days when there was no rain, and we had to bring in water supply for the rain, and it was just adding on to the budget. And the producer was, why did you have to add rain, so much rain in your screenplay? So I don't know why, but I have this. See, everybody has a favorite thing. For me, when I'm happy, when I'm sad, when I'm surprised, when I want to feel cozy, or when I want to feel pain, I just relate with rain. I think rain is an encapsulation of all the human emotions that have ever existed. For a farmer who's been waiting for a drop of water in his paddy field, that rain is a blessing, right? At the same time, for somebody who just wants to go to work but cannot because the Bangalore traffic is completely, messed because of a rain, that rain is a curse. So, yeah, I think rain encapsulates all the human emotion. It's a spectrum of emotions, and that's why I have this. You will find rain in all my works. You read India's Most Wanted, you read Dakma, you read Dakini, rain is everywhere.
Yeah, there's quite
It's
a.
like there's,
Hmm.
tell me.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. A lot of
It's
rain.
not
Yeah.
just because I want to overuse something. It's just because I like it. So so that means, see, the thing is, a person who may not like rain or for any other this thing, every general scene happens on a sunny day. So how does that make it any different? It's so overused. Sunny days are overused. When you don't write something, then you assume it is a sunny day.
Yeah, actually.
So for me, I make sure that I mention it's a rainy day so that my reader is in that mood where I am while I'm writing it. That's all. And even for this thing, when you mentioned, since you mentioned thunder, the one of the characters is named after a thunder god. So if you reread it again, you will find that the thunder
Indra. Yeah.
mostly happens around, you know, either before or after or during his chapters or his
Oh,
scenes.
okay.
So there are some little nuances here and there which many people have missed, but yeah, those are the. And his name contains two opposing aspects. One is your Indra, which is your Deva, and then you've got an Asur in his middle name.
Indra Vrishab, right? That's his name.
Vrishab is your buffalo,
Hmm. Yeah,
Mahishasur.
yeah.
So those are the symbolism. So that's one person who can be both a god as well as a demon. So those are some little symbolisms here and there.
Yeah, no, I can see you've had a lot of fun with it. And I think anybody who's reading a horror book or, even watching, you need these things, creaking doors and, you're always wondering, oh, what's going to happen? And Tara has claustrophobia. So,
Right,
all those things. And the lights are electricity is very unreliable in the village. So, things like
right.
that, you need all those things. Even the banyan tree, which you mentioned, that I remember when I was a child and we had to walk under a banyan tree, we were told to chant something because there were
Hmm.
spirits there. That's what
There
you
were spirits, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
especially late at night. So I remember walking past and like chanting something, till you crossed
Yeah,
it.
so
Yeah.
that's what I said. In most parts of the country, it's believed that that spirits reside in your banyan trees. Even if you look at Vikram Vetal, the Vetal actually hangs from a banyan tree.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. So horror is fun, we love being scared and the thrills and the chills. So
And if you can give a good social message through your horror, then you can actually bring a change in the society, is what I feel.
yeah.
And
You
our
get
dadis have been doing it for a very long time. They've been trying to discipline us naughty little kids by introducing these concepts of horror, but they were trying to give us some kind of a message, a
yeah.
moral.
So tell me, when did you get into the horror space? Like from the beginning, or how was it? What got you interested and so invested in
Uh,
it?
so my first book wasn't a horror book. It was a very simple slice of life kind of a story, inspired from my own life, my own struggles with my engineering and my the parental pressure and everything. So that was the first book. Uh, for this, we'll have to go back to another very interesting supernatural episode in my life. This was way back in 2016 or something uh, when I was kind of planning to switch from a corporate life to a career in the creative arts. So that time, my mother was very worried. I told you she's a very religious person. She started visiting all these astrologers, and I don't know how many temples she must have visited just to understand कि मेरे लड़के की मति क्यों भ्रष्ट हो रही है, क्यों अच्छे ऐसे जॉब को छोड़कर इस ऐसे फील्ड में जा रहा है. And that's how Daiva begins. So I think I'd leave it for Daiva, since you are going to read it. But just थोड़ा सा मैं बता देता हूँ यहाँ पे. So during one of the visits to a temple, there was this oracle at the temple. And in our part of the country, you've got oracles who get possessed by the mother goddess. Okay, and they start vibrating and doing all these things. They've got a talwar and everything, and they give prophecies. Okay, and one such thing happened to me, and this person, this possessed oracle, he grabs my hand and says, "Son, whatever you do, it has got something to do with the undead, whatever profession you choose in life," which was very kind of uh, surprising. And at that time, I thought because very soon after that, I got the offer to write a horror film, and it was not my story; it was somebody else's story, and it happened to be horror. Okay, and very soon after that, I got the opportunity to write India's Most Haunted. Again, it was not my concept. It was something which was offered to me by HarperCollins. So I started believing, maybe undead का मतलब भूत प्रेत है. So I have to do something with horror. That's going to be my profession. And coincidentally, I think by the time these books came out and that film happened, then Brahm happened, which also is a horror. Then I was like typecast as a horror writer. And then people knew me as a horror writer because some of the books were bestsellers and I had this loyal fan base as well. So then I think by the time I became a proper horror writer, but it was after Daiva and even Dakini for that matter that I realized that it's the undead doesn't really mean a ghost. The undead is something which is not dead, which is infinitely living. So it's a very far superior spiritual power. It could be the all-pervading mother goddess. I don't know. So the concept of undead is very spiritual, and that's what I'm learning now. And maybe in my future works, I'm able to write about it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
nice. So literally led by the oracle into this.
you can say that. And similar things were also obviously I told you like my mother was visiting these astrologers and everything, and similar forecasts were made by the astrologers, looking at the charts or whatever. I'm not an astrologer, so I won't be able to tell you exactly what they are. But yeah, so those are some interesting incidents. And as a writer, all these things were kind of encouraging me to look into it more and explore. And somehow I think even the whole podcast that we were discussing before we started this one, that podcast also kind of pushed me into the same zone. So, yeah, I think everything is happening for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I think it's good to go with the flow.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
and
now you,
sometimes when you feel like it's done, just leave it.
yeah. And you've got your own, you reinterpreted it now. So it's
Yeah,
more spiritual than the dark side. Yeah.
See, everything will have a dark, whatever is unknown will have a dark side. It's just that we have to decide whether we have to step into it or not. Once you step into it, then it becomes regular. It becomes like that sunny day.
Yeah. Which you don't seem to enjoy too much. Too many
No, it's not like I don't enjoy it. It's just that I love
stereotypes,
the rainy
stereotypes.
days
Yeah.
more. Yeah, so for me, the rainy day is that uh,
Yeah.
sunny day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. That's the default setting, the sunny day.
default setting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, true. So tell me, any books, movies, etc., as a horror writer, which, you can recommend or which you have particularly enjoyed?
There are quite a few books which I have enjoyed, not just horror, but if you are specifically talking about horror, then Rosemary's Baby is my all-time favorite.
Yeah, I know it's a very typical question, but I
Uh,
also know that even somebody like me, we all look for recommendations.
huh.
So, what to watch.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, no, then you should definitely, I mean, if you have not read Rosemary's Baby, then please do. It's a Bible for, I think, a lot of people say Stephen King this and Stephen King
Oh,
that.
I've
He is an
I've
amazing
read
writer.
Stephen King when I was in college. I used
Yeah.
to love it, really.
Stephen King is
Yeah.
like everybody has read it. At least one book,
Yeah.
once, one time in your life, people have read it. But Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin is a book that every horror enthusiast must read because the thing is, it's a spoiler, but there is no supernatural entity, yet there is horror. That's what makes it very, very interesting. And if possible, or if you don't have time, just watch the movie.
Yeah. No, I have time. I'll read the book. The books are usually better than the
Books are better. See, the thing is, the movie is true to the book. So whatever you read in the book, you will see in the movie as well.
Okay. Okay.
So that way, the director has been very kind to the writer because most of the time, Stephen King's books, when they come out as movies, they are totally interpreted in a different way. And The Shining is an example. It's a book that if you have read, amazing, but it's a recommendation otherwise.
Yeah.
The movie Shining is a Bible for all filmmakers on how to make a film. But the thing is, Stephen King hated that movie. And that movie was directed by Stanley Kubrick, who is the
Mm.
godfather among filmmakers. So,
Right.
despite of that, the writer who originally wrote the book, Stephen King, the king of horror, hated Kubrick's version of The Shining. But I think both are important. I mean, the book is an important work in the genre, and the film as well is an important work in the genre. If you get time, read the book and then watch the movie. I personally like the movie more.
Okay.
It's an unpopular opinion, but I like the movie more because it's more psychological than supernatural. Maybe that's why it's kind of more interesting. And other than that, I think we've got so many Puranas that we should read.
It's so funny, again, this is
Uh,
surreal that, you're saying things which I mean to ask you. I was just about to ask you. This like the third or fourth time this has happened. Maybe because
okay.
we're discussing supernatural stuff.
Maybe the spirits around us are
Yeah,
trying to,
I was just going to ask you, what about mythology? What about, anyway, tell me.
No, mythology, see, the thing is,
We were
it
talking about the
depends.
Puranas. So, yeah.
The Purans, the 18 Purans that are there,
Yeah, the Purans, yeah.
it's very difficult to read them as they are because it's one incident inside another incident inside another incident. So it becomes very difficult to understand, especially if you're a younger reader or a reader with very less patience. Then it becomes very difficult. Then you should really go for the interpretations which are available. But then with the interpretation comes the bias of the writer, the opinions of the writer, which kind of makes it very difficult for the reader to uh, interpret it in their way. But if you have the time, patience, and a lot of patience, then you should definitely go with the raw translations of the Puranas. Try to make your own interpretation. That's always helpful. So Markandeya Purana is Purana is what I'm reading now. I'm taking a lot of time. I'm also keeping um reading another interpretation of Devi Bhagavatam by Ramesh Menon. These are the two books that I'm reading right now. in
Great.
that particular genre.
So, anything you'd like to say in closing about the book or anything?
I don't know what I have to say. I mean, anybody who's see, the thing is, one thing which I really want to add here is a lot of people, wherever I've gone for these live sessions or, you know, talk sessions. I'm talking about talk sessions, not live sessions. The audience usually, especially when it's a school or something like that, the audience is mostly like, हम horror नहीं पढ़ते हैं क्योंकि डर लगता है.
Yeah.
So the one thing which I really want to mention is that, like you had said, don't reject a book because it has a cover that looks like a horror book. Just क्या कहते हैं वो डर के आगे जीत है वाला सिनारियो है. Just pick up the book and start reading. वो डर अपने आप निकल जाएगा. You just have to step inside that unknown once.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
all.
Yeah. And your book is absolutely, like you said, it's psychological, social. There are so many things in it.
It's layered. It's very layered. It's not just the rain and thunder and the banyan trees. There's a lot of other things going on as well. The tropes are there, the classic tropes are there, but then the character, which is what I also, somebody else was also telling me, one of the most overused archetypes in classic horror is, your gothic horror is the damsel in distress. You don't have it in this book. Even if she is in distress, she herself finds a way out.
Yeah.
That's why this book is kind of, despite using all the tropes, it kind of stands out as an evolution in this genre.
So tell me, any
Mm.
chance of this being made into a movie or a sequel to the book or something? Have you thought about it?
Movie, we are trying. Let's see what happens. It's all, the stars have to align in the right way. Um, Obviously, efforts have to be made, but still. As for the second part, I can talk about it right now.
Yeah.
There's no sequel, but you know that the ending is open. You know that there is somebody who's not really what he has been shown as. So he's going to appear in the next book.
Mm.
But that's not a horror book.
Okay.
That's a mytho-fiction and a fantasy kind of a mytho-fiction. And you've got that character reappearing, and he's the one who's going to guide the protagonist in his journey.
Okay.
You know the character. I'm not going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
name
I
the
got it. I
character.
got it.
Yeah. Uh,
Have you already started writing it? I want to read it. That's why I'm asking.
No, I just so right now I am working on that. So this month and the next I'm taking time off, and I'm trying to. I have the story in my head. It's just that's why it's you see that last epilogue there.
Yeah.
Uh, but I need to just put it on paper. The Dakini will be back, but not as the main character, but as one of the characters.
Okay. In
Yeah.
the shadows.
In the shadows. Maybe there's a universe out there. I mean, a horror universe which I'm trying to build,
Yeah.
in which your Dakini and the next film's hero and another character which I'm even from Dakma somebody will be coming. So all these will be interconnected.
Yeah,
So
Dakma is the book. Yeah.
Dakma was the previous fiction which I wrote for
Hmm.
HarperCollins. So a lot of readers they thought that Dakini has something to do with Dakma. Because even in Dakma, you've got a protagonist and you've got a journalist who's running an independent news agency, which is inspired from your uh, news laundries and your prints and all
Yeah.
those things. So you had a very similar kind of a setup, and it's in Bombay, Malabar Hill, which again makes an appearance here. So yes, somewhere it's all tied together. But again, Dakini is not a sequel to Dakma, nor is the next one, but the characters might appear.
Okay. They may be.
Otherwise, what happens is, yeah, because otherwise you have to see, you have to invest time in establishing your characters. If you just use fresh characters all the time, then like in Dakini, if I don't establish my character, then you can actually cut off around 50 to 60 pages, right?
Yeah.
So the next book, so that I can concentrate on the story, I can always get back the characters from the other books. You
Hmm.
don't have to re-establish, each character again and
Yeah.
again and again and again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I
So
get.
it's a single universe, it's a single world, but different stories, not sequels.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. That works. I'm waiting for the
Yeah, I
next.
hope so. I hope so. Let's see.
Thank
ठीक है,
you,
ठीक
Hari.
है. Thank you so much. And yeah,